Rob, I like what we're doing here because it really looks like woodworking. We're at a workbench. I see normal woodworking tools. This does not look like backwoods craziness. What are we doing today?
Today we are going to cut the slat mortises. So we have these rounded, I don't know what you call staves is the word I want to use, but that's not the right word. But they fit into these mortises, these 3/4 inch deep by 3/16 inch wide mortises on the rear post, and we're going to cut those today.
And it seems like there's a lot of challenges to that because those rear posts are bent. We're putting the slats in at two different places on the bend, and then those rear posts are also tapered. This is not like working with straight square timber.
Correct. So what we did is we used a tape measure, like a true tape measure, sewing tape measure, to mark out the location of these mortises because it's flexible and it can follow this curve. And then we took our trusty 2-pin marking gauge and we set it to the width of our chisel, which is 3/16. I like a little fatter ladder on these things. And then it's 1/8 of an inch from this front face here, and we mark those out.
And so now it's basically just mortising, right?
Just good old mortising, yeah.
So tell me about how we're going to hold this really irregular piece of wood.
So as you guys saw in the past video, this back post is tapered in this direction right here. So it's not going to sit flat on the bench. And so what we're going to do is, in order to get a good working surface, we're going to shim it up a little bit right here and clamp it down to the bench so we've got a nice solid surface to pound on. And we're going to put our shims right underneath the mortise so we're not pounding on open air. And we're just going to take our clamp and clamp it down. So do you want me to explain the California mortising?
Rob, what is California mortising?
So in the book, they refer to this as California mortising. I learned this technique from Paul Sellers, actually, who's far from California. And all it is you chop your mortise in from either side. You don't go all the way to the edge of the mortise. And then at your very last chop, you take out that last bit that's right next to the wall of the mortise. And the reason for that is then you can use the chisel to pry against the wall of your mortise without mashing those fibers. And I use that for all my mortising.
100%, me too.
Yeah, okay.
Because that way you never have to worry about messing up that shoulder.
Yeah, I think it's just a great way to mortise. So they, for some reason, think it's special, but...
I've read that in like a lot of old books. Yeah. I think a lot of people mortise that way.
Yeah, so... and I like the first, I don't use the mallet, the very first marks that I put on here. So as with all mortising, that first cut that's got to be bang on because everything else is going to derive from that. So I'm going to start here and I'm just going to use hand pressure or head pressure in my case. And I'm going to mark it.
I think I read in one of the books that some of the old-time chair makers would use a mortise chisel with a longer handle, and they would lean their shoulder in it.
Yeah.
And since it was green wood, there was no mallet at all. We've let these posts, let me change that. I let these posts dry out since we steamed them. I wrapped them up again, but probably not soon enough. So they're getting drier. In the middle, they're probably still wet, but here on the surface, we're probably going to need a little bit of mallet to get through that tougher wood.
And I'm going to use the mallet as soon as I establish my line this way. Hopefully I won't stab myself in the process. Okay, so now I kind of have my walls. So now I feel a little more confident at going in here and really giving this a good hard. That's.
And I see you using your ring finger as kind of a break there for added control. That's a great technique.
And the thing about this is you just want this mortise parallel to this face. That's the key thing because you don't want to break through here. It's only an 1/8 inch wall and it'd be real easy to mess that up. So now all I'm going to do is just keep going back and forth like this, taking out a little bit at a time. It's a very tedious process, but one that you don't want to mess up.
Okay, so Rob finished his mortise and did a great job. It's honestly a lot for me to live up to. This mortise is tough to cut because the front wall of the mortise, like where your back is going to go, is about 1/8 of an inch thick. So the chance of blowing out the side of this, it's a lot. It's not like cutting a regular furniture mortise. You have to be much more delicate. So I've got the 3/16 mortise chisel that Rob was using, and then we also got this 1/8 inch mortise chisel, which is great for scooping out the chips. And I'm just going through really slowly and carefully and excavating these mortises. And while I'm doing this,
I am going to take this back post that I just put mortises in, and I'm going to take it from octagonal to round. I'm going to start at the bottom because that's the easy part, and I'll get warmed up on that, and then I'll get up to the top where it gets a little bit more intimidating with the spoke shave.
Rob, why the spoke shave for this work? Why not the draw knife?
Because the spoke shave, you've got a lot more control with spoke shave than you do with a draw knife. You're taking off much smaller cuts, which is what you want to do at this point, is take off small cuts. And it also leaves a nice, because of the bed of the spoke shave, it leaves a burnished feel to the wood and look to the wood that you wouldn't get with a draw knife.
So the spoke shave is going to help keep you from making any mistakes. You can't cut too deeply, and it's a finishing tool.
Yes, and it's a real joy to use. All right, so remember, we're going to skew it, and it pulls towards us. We can go either way, but it's a little bit more effective towards you. And I'm just taking off little cuts. You can see this is a very thin cut. And I'm just following the shape that's already been established by the draw knife and just rounding it off.
Okay, now Rob, at this point, I see we have a completely different setup. We've already mortised our rear posts very carefully to receive the slats, and then we took our rear posts and our front posts over to the shave horse and spoke shaved them until they were nice and round. These are basically finished components at this point. What's the next thing we need to do?
Next thing we need to do, Rex, is to drill these rung mortises. So the first set we're going to do right now are the side rung mortises. And then later on, after, we're going to glue up this whole assembly here. And then we're going to take that whole assembly, put it in this jig, and drill these front and rear mortises.
And mortises in this case is just crazy chairmaker talk. They're holes.
It's a hole.
We're just drilling holes.
It's a round hole.
But we have to drill super precise holes in every dimension. And that's why we have this simple but very accurate jig you made over here.
Yes. So this jig is, so this is not what's in the book and not what's in the video. I did it that way when I made this chair, and it's absolutely doable. So if you want to do it that way, please feel free.
So the method in the book is what you've tried before, but this isn't in Alexander's book.
Correct.
This is the Follansbee jig.
Peter Follansbee teaches, learned from Jennie Alexander how to make this chair, teaches it himself, came up with this jig, and it really simplifies the operation. I highly suggest that you make this jig, basically.
And he has a blog post that I think is free on his Substack that we can link to.
Yes. First thing we're going to do is mark out our locations of our holes. So we already showed you, I'm going to find this stick is better. We already showed you that we drew this line down the center on the ray plane of this front post. And so we're going to use that line to align this properly in the jig. And the proper alignment is 41 degrees. Okay?
Let me just break in here real briefly and say every piece of wood has a radial plane and a tangential plane. We're not going to get into explaining that here, but that's something you can easily learn about if you just Google those two terms. And what we're doing here, are we going on the ray plane, or are we splitting the difference between the two planes?
We're splitting the difference between the two planes. So we marked the radial plane, and then this 41 degrees is splitting the difference of this angle right here between your side rung and your front rung and your side rung and your rear rung. So, but before we can do that, we need to mark the location of our holes, and we use this handy, convenient, what Alexander calls a dotter. It's just a piece of wood with a plate on the bottom and screws driven in at exactly the right locations for these tangent lines. And all we're going to do is we're going to get it close here, and we just mark it here, and then we squeeze it. It's real easy. And these make marks in the soft oak. And hopefully you can see there's a mark, there's a mark, there's a mark. And then next, we're going to take this and we're going to put it in the jig. So what I did is I marked 41 degrees on my jig, and then I set my bevel gauge to that 41 degrees. So I'm going to take this.
You want a third hand for clamping here?
Yes, please. I'm going to get my middle mark right here in the center of this U. I'm going to come, actually what I'm going to do is slide this back so it's easier for you guys to see. And I'm going to align that bevel gauge that's set to 41 degrees with, I'm squeezing it into the V block, and then I'm aligning that line with the bevel gauge, and now I've got it set. Now I just need to move it so that without screwing up my angle, so that go ahead, Rex.
There we go.
And inadvertently, I actually did something intelligent and made this long enough so that I can still check it and make sure that I'm on even after my clamping. And I'm pretty much there.
Rob, you are a terrible content creator. It's essential that when you mess something up but it works, that you pretend like that was the idea from the beginning. You need to get with the program, man.
All right, so now I need to mark a vertical line on my mark, and then I need to mark a horizontal line so I'm in the center of this post right here. So again, this jig is super genius and makes this really easy, because now all you can do, so if you look at the video and the book, they tell you to wrap this paper around and do that to get this line, and then you have to have this other special jig to get the horizontal line. This makes it super easy. You just take a square and you line it up with the hole. I'm trying to align it, okay? And I'm gonna just strike a line. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing here. And the same thing here. And so I'm in my hole there. I'm sighting it this way, and I'm on my rest right here. So all I have to do is I have to keep it on this rest, keep it sighted this way, and then just drill till I stop. So here we go. And you can bring it out and clear the chips.
It looks like the chips are going to keep us from bottoming out.
Yeah. So the one bad thing about having one of these depth stops is it doesn't clear the chips as well. But it's a very worthwhile trade-off in my opinion. Okay, now I'm bottomed out and I can come out. Okay. So the bottom of my hole here is just touching my tangent line. The whole entirety of the hole is above the tangent line, and it's just, the bottom of it is just, or the lower, edge of the hole is just touching my tangent line.
Now, so people can understand, can you show me with your finger where the next hole is going to go?
It's going to go right here.
No.
Oh, the next hole here, I'll show you with an actual rung.
Yeah.
I'm going to overlap it just ever so slightly, maybe 1/8 of an inch, so that this is going to go like this, and it's going to lock this into place.
So the two are going to intersect in there, and then there's no way those are pulling apart.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Now I'm going to drill my second hole, Again, I'm just putting it in my mark that I already made, resting the extender on here, taking my square and closing one eye and aligning it with my square, and then I'm just going to drill until I bottom out on my depth stop.
Now, while Rob is in the regular workshop doing the rest of the drilling on those rear posts, I'm going to split out the stock we need to make the rear slats. That's the part that your back actually rests against. I've got a pair of templates here that Rob made, because chair making is all about jigs and templates, and they give me a rough idea of the stock that I need. This is one of the original bolts of red oak that we split out from the log 9 months ago, and I've had it wrapped in plastic wrap since then, and it's still, believe it or not, it's still actually wet to the touch. This is still green wood, and it's going to be pretty easy to split. And if you've forgotten, this is our riving brake. Super important for using with a fro. It's going to give me leverage and let me control my splits. I'm going to take my big bolt of material and stick it right in there, just like that. You can see what's going on here and make one of these. There's also a set of plans that are free, but only if you're a patron. That's a patron exclusive. Patreon.com/Rex Krueger. Now, the important thing about riving is you almost always need to work your stock in halves so that the pressure on the wood is equal. So even though I want skinny, like 1/8 inch pieces, I can't just split an 1/8 inch off of this bigger bolt. I need to split it in half and then a half again, and I'm probably going to end up working it at the bench with planes. So I've got my fro right in the middle, and now we're going to hit it. There we go, and my split is running out towards the back, so I'm going to use my riving brake. I'm going to flip it and use my riving brake to put pressure that way, and that's going to get the split to run back in the other direction. Okay, now the piece is split, not exactly in half, but close, and I'm going to take my thicker piece and rive that in half. And this piece does have a bit of a twist to it. You can see here on camera the log was twistier than we were hoping for, so we'll see what happens. Controlling the direction of the split, I'm going to move my bolt. Should get it to run back towards this lower one that I'm pressing down on. And it's equalizing that pressure and controlling that split pretty well. There we go. And riving is a powerful tool for stock preparation. That piece is like 1/2 inch. That's not bad. And because it's green, I can process that down to slat thickness very quickly with hand planes. Traditional chair maker would have definitely used the draw knife and the shave horse for this, but I am way more experienced with hand planes. Okay, last thing we need to do is we need to turn this rough split material into stock for the rear slats? Slats. Yeah, so for the rear slats. And I'm going to do this work with a hand plane because I know how to do that really fast. Okay, that board is now totally twist free. That's good. So now I want to flatten it out a little bit further. And for that, we're going to go with Old Faithful. Now, Rob really emphasized the need for twist-free wood here. And so what I've done is I've prepped 3 surfaces, a flat face and my edges, and my ends are already fine. And the reason I did that is I'm going to use a marking gauge to scribe that flat face all the way around onto the rough side, and that's going to give me a line to work to. Rob, what's my target thickness here?
3/16.
Piece of cake. So this cheap Defiance gauge actually has a rule right on it, which is handy. I don't use it a lot, but once in a while. And I'm going to register that gauge against what I've already done. Wow.
Are we close?
No, we're like so far off.
Oh, good. That means we got plenty of stock to remove and get it super nice. And
I'm going to actually set my gauge to 1/4, and we'll have a little wiggle room. Rob, have we arrived at the glue up stage already?
we have.
And so we've got a front post, a rear post, and 3 short rungs.
Make sure you choose the short ones. Make sure you check that they're all the same size.
These are thoroughly dry. They were pretty dry to begin with, and then we had them in the kiln that we built in a previous project. Can you hit 2 of them together?
So yeah, hear that?
They make a nice light ringing noise. If they make more of a thud noise, they're still wet. Because those old boys in the woods didn't have moisture meters.
No. They had a bucket of sand and a wood stove.
All right, how are we going to do this?
We're gonna, real easy, put glue in all the holes, put the rungs in, pound them in with a nice wooden mallet, because you don't care because it's end grain, and it's also going to be buried inside of a mortise. Then put glue in these holes and put that on top, and this time we're going to use a rubber mallet because we don't want to mar up our nice chair surface that we spent so much time spoke shaving and what's the other thing that we use?
Oh,
card scraping. Yes.
Get a nice surface. All right, so disposable brush, glue goes in the holes.
Yep, real simple and easy. Just put it in there. Make sure you get it on the sides. The end doesn't matter because end grain's not very strong. We chamfered the ends of these rungs. That's an important piece here.
Just like we were sharpening a pencil very poorly.
Right. We did a very poor job with a very nice knife. This one's a little funky. So you're going to hear the sound change as I pound it in. Hear that?
And you know what's happening there with the sound is you can tell the moment when the rung bottoms out, and what you're hearing is the whole bench ringing when you hit it.
And even as, as good as those sound, you're going to see in a second that when we put the clamps on them, they're not completely seated yet. So the only really challenging part of this evolution, actually maybe not be, is getting them all to line up just at this very early stage. But these seem to line up pretty well. So I'm going to turn it towards you so that I'm flat on the bench. And now I'm really going to hit it hard, and you hear it. And it's going to rock back and forth on the middle rung. So now it's ringing, ringing, ringing. Okay.
Rob, this is going so smoothly, it's almost like we did the other one off camera to make it seem like we knew what we were doing.
To make all of our mistakes off camera.
It seems like we did that, doesn't it?
It does seem like that.
All right, now we're going to listen here for that telltale creak that says the rungs are seating even more deeply in the posts.
Right. And so, important safety tip, put some wooden spacers on your metal clamp so you don't mar the surface of your chair. Okay, I'm going to be quiet now. You can hear this come home. There it is. these seated better than the last group.
There it is.
Yeah.
One more?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just till it stops. That's probably good.
Wow, the clamp is really important.
Yeah. So I'm going to take this clamp off, do the center one, and then we can take the clamps off because we're where we need to be. Oh, that one moved quite a bit more. Okay. So there is our assembled side rung mortise assembly, I guess, if you want to call it that. I'm just going to wipe off the glue now so I don't have to do it later. But we didn't get a ton of squeeze out.
Which means we use the right amount of glue.
Right.
A little squeeze out, but not too much.
The true test is how straight is that, okay? If it's twisted, you're going to see these out of plane. But the other thing you can do is take it, put it on your nice flat bench, and it's not rocking. So that means we got a nice, we drilled these correctly, and they're nice and flat.
Rob, what's exciting to me right now is you're holding something that vaguely resembles a chair. After, what's it been, 9 months? 10
Something
months?
like that.
Of work. A lot of it didn't seem to have much to do with chair making. It was very abstract. All of a sudden, this is reminiscent of a chair. What do we have going on here?
So what we have here are the two side assemblies. We've moved out of the fabrication stage, or we're almost out of the fabrication stage, and we're into the assembly stage. We drilled these mortises today and then put these rungs in here and glued them up, clamped them. And now they're drying with no clamps. They don't need clamps to dry. And as you can see, we've got our mortise slats right here. And the chair's going to look like this when it's done. The short rungs are going to go in the back. The long rungs are going to go in the front. And that angle will determine, we need to do the assembly on this piece in order to cut these slats to exactly the size that they need to be.
So these are the slats that I just worked on for like an hour. It took a long time. I actually ended up hewing them with the hatchet a little bit because they were really thick to get down to size. But now they're flat, straight, twist-free. It would be really good for me to get a plane and set it up for green work. My usual 4-plane has a wide mouth, but not wide enough for the shavings we do for this. So I might take one of my other old beater 4-planes and convert it to be better for green work. But these are ready to go, and we have templates here, and we've left them extra long because we're going to have to get this assembled and fit them to the actual spacing that we end up with. And as I understand it, we're going to shape these into this sort of vague football shape, and then we're going to steam them. They're going to come out of the steamer, and we're going to flex them into position and pop them into those mortises and let them cool. So there's no bending form for these. The chair itself is the bending form.
Yeah, and we're going to show you a couple of tricks. That's not trivial because there's not a form, and you're basically using the finished chair as your form. You got to be careful. You don't want to be doing a ton of pounding on these things. You have to pound them to get them into place. You want them to be tight, but you don't want the chair to flex as you're doing it. So we'll show you some tricks on how to do that.
So before we're done, we'd like to tell you that the Chair Maker's Plan bundle that we've been talking about is ready. It's got the shave horse, the 2 low saw benches, the kiln, and the steam box. Now, we highly recommend you buy Make a Chair from a Tree by Jennie Alexander from Lost Art Press, and it's got the bending jig and a riving brake and all this other stuff, but we've compiled these extra plans for extra things that we've made that either aren't in the book or they're cheaper or they're easier or whatever. We found them all really helpful. It's all the stuff we've really used, so you can click the link down in the description and check that out, or go to rexkrueger.com/store. And we'll be back next week.
Yes, and speaking of jigs and plans, Rex is going to put the link to the Peter Follansbee video
Yep.
on how to build the drilling jig. So
Yeah, so it's a Substack post with a video attached to it.
Right.
And we'll link to both of those things down in the description. Thank you for reminding me. We will see you in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be almost done with this chair. See you soon.
take care.